Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Noreen Broomhead, and I'm here for our fifth sharing session. So today we're going to feature the Northern Lights graded musicianship examinations. So we'll just get started here. So CNCM offers a holistic musicianship program, including, here's my first problem today that I didn't see. Our pictures are covering my screen. 6 areas of assessment and technique for grades 1 through 10 that reflect a building of skills that nurture a well-rounded musician. Examinations are in a private setting with the examiner or in a private online session with the assistance of a teacher and the examiner. For a complete CNCM grade, the successful completion of the musicianship and technical components are required within 12 months of the successful completion of the corresponding grade of piano performance or the Music for Everyone star and pop performance examinations, or vice versa. A syllabus is available as a free download from the website cncm.ca. And as always, assistance is available by contacting the office at cncmoffice@gmail.com. Students may take any level without prerequisite and may proceed to any level or grade. And certificates are issued for each successful grade of musicianship. Should there be a necessity for special accommodations, please advise the office at the time of registration. And by that, it might be small hands or maybe a visual or a hearing situation. But by all means, feel free to contact us. So the technical requirements are set out in the syllabus from pages 24 to 95. The specific required keys, tempi, rhythms, articulations for each grade will be specified there. All technique is to be memorized. And grades 5 to 7 have the addition of Hanon exercises. Grade 8, also a choice of listed Hanon exercises or Czerny 168 measure exercises, Opus 821, numbers 1 to 10, any 3, and they are referenced on page 78 of the syllabus. In grades 9 to 10, advanced technical exercises are added, and a choice of 3 from the list is set out in the syllabus on page 95. So for the grade 9 advanced technical exercises, there's a choice of any 3 contrasting exercises from these following collections listed on page 87. Czerny 168 measure exercises, Opus 821, 11 to 160. Hanon, the complete 60 exercises, choice of 44, 47, 50, 54, and 55. Pishna, 60 progressive exercises, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Philippe, exercises for independence, part 1, numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, or 6. And co-requisites are grade 8 theory, grade 9 harmony, and grade 9 history. Grade 10 advanced technical exercises, choose any 3 contrasting exercises from one of the following collections. Czerny, School of Velocity for Piano, Opus 299, any one of those. Hanon, the complete 60 exercises, numbers 58, 59, or 60. Pishna, 60 progressive exercises, numbers 3, 12, 13, 14, or 15, and Philippe, Exercises for Independence, Part 2, third series, numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8. The co-requisites for grade 10 are as follows: grade 8 theory, grade 9 harmony, grade 9 history, grade 10 harmony, and grade 10 history. So we'll move on to some oral requirements. For grades 1 to 3, there are 6 components within that. And we will be looking at these a little more specifically in a latter part of this slideshow. Grades 4 to 5, 7 components. Grades 6 to 10, there are 8 components. Vocalization requirements. Grades 1 to 2, there are 2 components. Grade 3, 3 components. Grade 4, 4 components. Grade 5 to 9, 5 components. And grade 10, 6 components. Sight requirements for all grades, there are 2 components, which are a sight clapping exercise and sight reading. Harmonization requirements, grades 1 to 4 are 1 component. Harmonization of a melody with a left-hand triad. Grades 5 to 10, there are 2 components. Harmonization of a melody with a triad below the melody and single notes in the left hand. Grades 9 and 10, left-hand notes in octaves and the addition of chord progressions. Improvisation requirements. Grade 1, there are none, but starting in grades 2 on to 4, there's 1 component, and that is a complete 2-measure phrase and end on the tonic. The numbers of keys used increases as the grade levels progress. Grades 5 to 10, there are 2 components in improvisation. The number of measures to add increases, as do the grades. Major keys, minor keys are added. Grade 6 onward, there's addition of left-hand triads or single notes, and a choice of adding left hand on the first playing or on a repetition of the piece. Transposition requirements. Grades 1 to 10, there's 1 component. The degrees of complexity vary as the grades progress. For example, the number of keys that will be included. Hands separately, progressing to hands together, grade 7 onward. Musicianship examinations are taken in a private setting with an examiner, included in all performance levels except introductory, associate, and licentiate grades. These may be taken at the same session as the performance examination or at another separate session. There's a list here of the maximum minutes allotted for each of the musicianship examinations. Grades 1 and 2, 15 minutes for each of those grades. Grades 3 and 4, 20 minutes for each of those. Grade 5 and 6, 25 minutes each. Grade 7, 30 minutes. Grade 8, 35 minutes. Grade 9 and 10, also 35 minutes. Grades 1 through 4, musicians requirements are part of the workshop examination. So I've moved into a piano workshop format here. In grades 5 through to 10, musicianship requirements may be part of the workshop or a separate musicianship examination. The same time allotment is given for each grade as in the performance examination. And I think that this is a duplicate slide. My apologies. Students may take any level without prerequisite and may proceed to any level or grade. So here we're going to be looking specifically at the requirements for a grade 5 examination. So to begin with, the first part of the exam will be the Hanon. And I've referred to this earlier in the show here. Memory is not required, and these would be prepared at the given metronome speed, and that would be quarter note is 72, played in legato or staccato eighth notes, as asked for by the examiner. Formula patterns, we have two major keys and their relative minors, all in legato eighth notes. Scales, we have three flat keys, and they're two octaves hands together. Legato or staccato will be asked for by the examiner. The relative harmonic and melodic minors, also two octaves, legato or staccato as requested. Contrary motion, B flat major, E minor, hands together, again 2 octaves, only legato in this case. Chromatic scale beginning on B flat, legato, 2 octaves, and whole tone starting on C sharp, 2 octaves, hands together, legato. Next section would be the triads and chords. So we have the listing there, A flat, B flat, E flat majors, and the minors are F, C, and G. Hands together, 2 octaves, root position and inversions, quarter notes without rests. Broken, the same keys, root and inversions, hands together, 2 octaves, in triplet eighth note. Pardon me. Solid dominant seventh for G major, A flat and E flat, root and inversions, separate hands, and played in half notes. And broken dominant sevenths for the same keys, root and inversions, hands separate, 1 octave in eighth notes. Arpeggios, A flat major, E flat, and G major. The minors are F minor, C minor, G minor, all root position, hands separately, 2 octaves in eighth notes. So we'll move on to the vocalization. This is an overview of the requirements. And we have 5-finger patterns, major or minor. And I would like to make a general comment about minor keys, whether it's scales, pentascales, all elements where solfege is to be used. Very particular care needs to be taken that students are aware of the difference in minor solfege. So these in 1 octave scales, major, natural, minor, harmonic, and melodic minors, and chromatic scales. And the solfege labels are indicated, and 1 octave arpeggio, major and minor, and dominant and diminished seventh chords. And also the solfege is indicated there. A transposition overview, grades 1 through 4. They'll be requested for 5-finger patterns, major keys only, and right hand melody to be transposed. It's a 1 octave melody range in major keys only, and right hand. That was grades 5 and 6, grades 7 through to 10. Simple 2-voice passage, hands together, assigned major or minor keys. And do realize that as the grade levels progress, the complexity also will. Harmonization overview, grades 1 to 4. Left-hand block chords, triads. Grade 1, C major. Grades 2 and 3, C and G major. And grade 4, C and G major and A minor. Chord progressions begin at grade 5. Requested 1, 5, 1, ascending and descending, root and inversions. And grade 6, the progressions are 1, 5, 1, and also 1, 4, 1 in the keys of C, F, and G major, or A minor, ascending and descending with inversions. Grade 7, progressions 1, 4, 5, 1. Keys C, F, and E flat major, or A and D minor, ascending and descending through inversions. And in grade 8, 1, 4, 5, 1 progression, keys to be C major, G major, F, B flat, and E flat major. Minors have been expanded to be A minor, E minor, B, and G minor, ascending and descending through inversions. So we have some comments there. We're looking for the use of legato pedaling with these progressions. The progressions are to be memorized. Left hand is using single notes. The right hand has a complete triad. In harmonization, X's will mark the placement of the chords, triads, but there will not be a chord symbol provided. Appropriate cadence should be used. And improvisation, for grades 1, it is not required, but grades 2 to 4, what will be given is a 2-measure melody in an assigned major key, and the improvisation is to add a 2-measure response, ending on the tonic with an implied cadence. Grade 5, what will be given? A 2-measure melody in the assigned major or minor keys. The improvisation is requiring a 2-measure response, ending on the tonic with an implied cadence. The harmonization of that will include a left-hand single note or block chord accompaniment using 1 and 5 harmonies. An X will indicate the placement of the accompaniment in the given melody. Both the given melody and improvised melody will be harmonized. And to note, the candidates may improvise the melody alone and then repeat it with harmonization, or improvise the melody and harmonize at the same time. Improvisation for grades 6 through to 8. What will be given is a 2-measure melody in the assigned major or minor keys. The improvisation will be a 2-measure response. Grade 6, it will end on the tonic with an implied cadence. Grade 7 and 8, the end will be on the tonic, median or dominant with an implied cadence. The harmonization will include a left-hand single note or block chord accompaniment using 1, 4, and 5 harmonies. An X will indicate the placement of the accompaniment in the given melody. Both the given melody and improvised melody will be harmonized. And candidates may, as in the previous slide, improvise the melody alone and then repeat it with harmonization, or improvise the melody and harmonize at the same time. So this next slide is taken from Lawless Total Theory. This is where theory comes into helping with skills. Learning how to write an answering melody for the theory examinations is a good stepping stone to doing it as an improvisation skill that's going to be required on an examination. So some of the same basic rules, ending on the tonic, moving stepwise to that final note where possible. So this is just a general guideline to assist teachers with preparation of this element. So that is the end of the slideshow. I just would like to talk a little bit about some teacher's aids. Some people feel that tackling this part of a CNCM examination is a little overwhelming maybe for first timers. But first of all, um, we have a number of resources available, and there is a complete list in the syllabus on pages 99 to 101. It is a bibliography that outlines or lists a number of resource books that would assist in preparation of these skills. I've already alluded to the fact that using theory is a good support to getting through some of these learning skills. Creativity on the part of the teacher. When does this process begin? Just in time to be ready for an exam? I think this is a skill that needs to be built on right from the very beginning, like their hearing. Did the notes move upwards? Did they move downwards? Did they step? Did they skip? All of these things can be taken out of their current repertoire. A brand new song that can be preparation for sight reading or clapping exercises. And what do you see? What do you hear? Kind of questions as they're working through things. So, yeah, taking little folk tunes, simple little melodies like hot cross buns, transpose that to a different position. It doesn't always have to come from a book per se. Just know your students and where their strengths and weaknesses are, and work within what you have. It doesn't mean you always have to go and lay out a lot of money on an extensive library. So I also have a little comment here. I know that the Do It partners are available for technique and that for all the grades up to 8. And I believe they're available now as a free download. There are the keyboard and harmonization and fake books that are available for lead line work, and they're great for transposition, developing harmonization skills. I know Deborah Wanless has a whole selection of keyboard harmony books, and they've been very well received. So, one other thought as I'm closing my presentation part of this is this is a wonderful opportunity we have to develop long-term musicians. Not everybody's going to become a pedagogue or a professional performer. What we're hoping to do is create a love of music and a lasting foundation that they can sit down and perform recreationally and understand what they're hearing, and maybe down the road be of assistance to their own families, but make it a lifelong experience. And the playing of performance pieces and repertoire and studies and technique and musicianship all go hand in hand to build these fundamentals. So teachers, enjoy your students and enjoy the journey. So we can open the floor for comments and questions.
Amazing. Thank you, Noreen. I know going through all of the different musicianship requirements can definitely look a little bit overwhelming, but for myself, I found that doing these things really just helped me to be more comfortable actually at my instrument and to be more confident that, hey, I know all of these different skills and I can just hop in and do this thing that I'm getting asked to, or I can just jam with my friends if I want to, or whatever. And it was really applicable skills to be using in real life situations. So I appreciate it. Oh, I'm not hearing you right now, Noreen. I don't know if other people are hearing you. Oh, now you're muted, Noreen. Try unmuting again and see if that works the magic.
How about now?
Yes, beautiful. Okay, fantastic. Turning it off and turning it back on. Still
Hmm.
works great.
Okay. Well, I think I was just going to say about my own personal experience and with some of my students that have been in this program a little bit. A lot of them are connected with praise teams at churches and that. And a lot of that music comes just with chord symbols, what we call a lead line. And they're getting quite proficient at joining in and playing in a group situation with a praise team band or that. And I think we could all agree that the one thing about studying an instrument such as the piano, because you just can't pick it up and take it to your friend's house to play, and if they don't have one, you're not part of the group. But being able to use these skills and go and play in a group situation is wonderful.
It really is, especially because piano can be kind of isolating sometimes,
Yes.
because you're not usually as expected to play with other people. So,
Yeah.
no, totally agree. All right, does anyone have any questions that they would like any clarification on from anything that Noreen said or any other general questions? I think I had one question. You had mentioned that there are resources that can be used or downloaded or purchased. Are those all available on the CNCM website, or is there another website we should be aware of for?
Well, the list in the back of the syllabus the bibliography that I referred to, that they would be from a number of sources, right? But through the CNCM, we have the Total Theory program and Deborah Wanless Music. We have the keyboard harmony. Um, and Debbie, correct me, where is the Do It Partners? They're downloadable, right?
Yeah, they're downloadable. They're just clarifying. They actually aren't free, but they are available by just reaching out to me at this point.
Oh, okay. My mistake, everybody.
That's okay. we've been being creative with them, so it's been changing.
Well, that's good. A fresh face is always good, right?
Correct. And I should say that in the upgrades that we've done with those, they now include the required Hanon
Oh,
and
good.
at grade 8, the required Cherny studies. So students can just purchase those and then they will have everything they need for technique.
So maybe this is an appropriate time to say if a student is coming in for an examination and they're doing Hanon or a Cherny, whatever, we're not bringing in a photocopy to use those. We need books. Yes.
And in fact, our examiners will have copies of those within their packages now, so that students will not have to provide a second copy of the technical exercises. And just to clarify, they do not have to be memorized. Noreen already said that, but just to reinforce that, but they don't have to provide the copy for the examiner as well now. So.
Also, just asking about those technical exercises. I'm not sure if you said this, Noreen, or not, but are the students going to be expected to play all of them in the exam? How does that work?
No, the examiner will select from each group. Probably a variety of keys throughout the series, so you couldn't hear everything for every specific key, but to get a sense of, yes, they've been working on these, they understand the keys, the metronome speeds, yeah,
So this would go,
articulations, whether it's legato, staccato.
okay. And this would go for both the Hanon exercises and then also the scales and triads and
Right.
everything then?
Now, one thing I didn't mention is that as the levels go up with the Hanon, um, rhythms could be involved, right? I was saying legato and staccato, but at some point they could be asked for a triplet followed by an eighth. Yeah. So all of that is outlined per grade in the syllabus.
And generally, what examiners will ask is students will warm up with one of those technical exercises or part of a technical exercise, and then the examiner may ask for a second one. Sometimes it's the same one if they haven't done it complete, or it can be a brand new one of the requirements, but the student won't necessarily know which ones they're going to be asked there either. So, but hopefully they'll be covering a couple of them for sure.
Perfect. And another question I had was, sometimes we just have our moments when we're doing exams, right? So what if you start playing a scale or you start a hand and exercise and it just completely falls apart in the first couple of measures? Is it okay if the student just starts over? Will they get deducted marks on that? How is that approached in the exam situation?
Well, of course, we hope that there aren't numerous restarts. And I think if I, as an examiner, had someone, I mean, the first one, they might be very nervous. They might need to make a restart. If I was unsure that they really knew how a formula pattern went because they just couldn't do when to go contrary back, the pattern, I might ask for maybe one that I thought would be more accessible. I get a reading on where I thought maybe was the problem. If I had a candidate that had numerous restarts in all areas, I would be more concerned that maybe they're really not solid on what's going on. So I would look at that a little differently than maybe just one little blurb here or there. I mean, I think part of our philosophy is we're trying to create good musicians, but we're not ogres either, right? So we've been in those shoes at some point, right?
And one thing I always tell my students is that the very exciting part about playing the piano is that you're human. So your humanity is going to come through, and that means that you're not just going to play perfectly like a robot all the
Yep.
time. Yeah.
But that should be part of the teaching, how you forgive yourself. Because some people are so bound in being perfectionists, it can sideline them from, the brain gets hooked up on what went wrong.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yep. So this is more just for the technique, the scales and things like that. If a student uses different fingering than the kind of traditional or standard fingering, um, this is not saying like wrong fingering, like they're just stumbling over everything, but there are different kind of schools of thought. So like Chopin fingering or like natural fingering. Would they get deducted marks for choosing something different, or it's kind of like if they have the flow and everything of the scale or triad or arpeggio, that kind of doesn't matter?
It's just as you said, if they have an alternate choice, and I don't mean creative fingering, but an alternate choice that keeps it musical, because I mean, let's face it, scales can be musical, right? They can be rhythmic. Triads, if they get through it and it's consistent and fluent, by all means. That's my take on it anyway.
Perfect. Um, For the listening in the early grades, I just wanted to clarify, for the intervals, will students get deducted marks if they answer step or skip instead of a second or a third or something like
No,
that? So both are acceptable in that.
correct.
Okay. Um, and before I keep on kind of barreling through my questions, does anyone else have anything they would like to ask? Yeah, Laura, go for it.
Good morning, everyone. This isn't on technique, but it's on the improv component. So sometimes a student doesn't want to feel very creative with their 2-bar ending, or later on 4-bar improv. And so how is that assessed as far as like creativity? I mean, I guess you're looking for a cadence component to the answer phrase that they're creating, or the 2-bar phrase that they're creating, but is there an assessment sort of evaluative component to how creative a student may be, or how uncreative, how
Well,
contrived?
I think unity is a better approach. If you're going to throw in a lot of new kinds of rhythms that didn't manifest anywhere in the first phrase, keeping it more simple and basic musicality is better than trying to get fancy, right? And if we're in those lower grades, teaching them to step over the bar line, just like in the theory books, to end on the tonic, then you're going to have some sort of a cadence that makes sense, right? So that's
So you're looking for rhythmic unity as well as kind of melodic range unity?
It would make sense to be leaping all over. I mean, I don't see that happening too much in my experience. I think what happens is they get carried away and put too many notes in or measures. Like they don't just stay with adding 2 measures, right? Debbie's chuckling. She knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, some of them tend to go on a little, and so then that would be a penalty, right? I mean,
that's right.
Our response would be, stay within your 2 measures, so that rhythmic structure becomes important. But yeah, really creative kids can, once they get going, can be.
Well, and I think sometimes that comes from they think they have to be too creative, and then they get stuck because they're like, oh, now what am I going to do? And how am I going to get to the tonic at the end? So they lose sight of 2 measures really isn't that much.
Well, exactly. And so that's what I was trying to think, like, how do you keep it from also feeling fairly contrived? Like,
well, I think for me, if it makes some musical sense, and I think that's where the teaching comes in before they ever get in the room, explaining these examiners aren't looking for anything like amazing and amount or note range or that, just basic common sense moving around, right? And maybe have them try and hum something before they ever try at their lessons, not at the exam. But, how would you think you'd finish that if you were going to sing it, right? Like, la, 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 something. What do you think would end that nicely? And then try and transfer that to what would that be on the keyboard?
I think also if you keep it a little bit more simple, like improvisation can be very daunting for most people. So if you do just kind of look for that rhythmic or melodic coherence and look for a little bit more of a simple approach, then all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, I can do this. Like that's so cool, And um, Debbie or Noreen, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's just, again, giving that confidence, giving that practical skill to the student so that they can then take that forward and then maybe compose their own music or whatever outside of this simple exercise. But yeah.
Well, when Laura first posed the question, what immediately came to my mind was KISS, but I'll spell it with one S, KIS. Keep it simple.
I think
thanks. And then those would score quite successfully on.
That's right. If it's rhythmic, ends on the tonic, and feels like a bit of a phrase, yes.
Okay.
And then I actually had a follow-up question on that. For the improvisation in later grades, they are expected to add chords or left-hand single notes.
Mhm.
Um, if the student decides to repeat the melody and add in the chords, um, does the repeat need to be exactly the same as the first time? Because I know when I play it, as soon as I've played an improvisation example, it is out of my head for the most part. Kind of how is that graded on the part of the examiner?
Well, in my experience, most people opt for a one-time go because of that very thing that you're saying. So, for me, if I'm assessing somebody that chose to do it in 2 steps rather than 1, I'm never sure what I'm gonna get till they start doing it, right? So you have to really be listening to what their answer is to see if it was the same again, right? Because it could turn into something completely new. So my comments in that might be, if it turned out to be something fairly balanced, that's okay, but I would draw attention to be careful that, you do repeat the same thing, right? So there'll be, it depends on how much it varies, right? How much of a deduction, but I would at least point out that you did a fairly good job, but, was it the same thing? And I think that's why most people do it in one shot, because they don't trust themselves to keep it the same both times.
That
Can I
makes
just add something to that too? That we're talking about they can use block chords in the left hand. We're not saying it has to be keyboard style, but many of our students, once they get into grade 6, 7, and 8, they're also doing keyboard style with their improv. So that's also welcome. The minimum requirement is the block left hand
Yeah.
chords, but many of them, because they're doing it in their keyboard harmony, are already overlapping it into their improv.
And this is why learning those chord progressions is so connected to the whole process, because if they're familiar with that, they will develop a sense of how to move this through. My experience anyway.
I think as someone going through the exam process, that would have been my experience as well. You're interacting with these chords and ideas in so many different aspects. You're doing it in the ear training, you're doing it in the improvisation, kind of harmonization and everything, that it becomes a little bit of second nature, if you pay attention at all, in that whole process. Does anyone else have any other questions about any of the musicianship exam? I think I have just one more about the clap back, and I guess two questions about that. Can they count out loud when they're doing? Oh, sorry, not the clap back. Sorry, I got the sight clapping and the clap back mixed up. Okay, sight clapping. Um, are they allowed to count out loud for that when they are doing that in the exam?
Well, I've I've heard the odd student that does do that, and I know we encourage them not to, but for some, that's their way of staying grounded. So I'm maybe lenient about that. I don't know. I haven't had my knuckles wrapped for doing it, but um, I'm all about seeing the candidate being successful. So if that's what it takes for them to actually, if we're talking learning styles too, some people need that oral connection to make the physical thing work, right?
And in fact, there's no deduction if they count out loud. We encourage them as they mature to do it internally, but at the same time, there is no deduction.
Yep.
Okay, and the last question I have is now about the clap back in the ear training portion. Um, That is very long. I find that my students have a very difficult time to remember um, all of the clapback. Do you have any tips on how students can effectively prepare for that um, as longtime teachers and examiners and every situation that you've seen?
Well, I have a couple comments. I think this is where starting ground up, right from day one, building these skills in, because it's a building process. So as each level goes along, um, you develop that ear to be able to take in more notes. So what I would say that some of my experience has been in maybe with transfer students is that they would meet whatever skills are required for that day. And then if they don't do an exam for another year, they've never touched it again, where that should have been a continuous process, right? And sometimes I've done things like um, we do a lot of vocal things about this, right? Because singing connects quickly to the voice rather than the physical thing of the fingers, things like that. And actually, some dictation, actually writing down the rhythms you heard or things like that. It all meshes together, right?
And Lois, just to mention that portion is a melody. So some students are doing the vocalization that Noreen is talking about. So again, if they use their voice or if they used it with rhythmic syllables, that
Yeah.
would also not be penalized. And then the improv that they learn starts to come into play if they feel they usually can get the first two measures and then they have a challenge remembering to the end. But I always talked about what would rhythmically that look like to the end. And very often they get really, really close, even if they can't remember exactly, by using the voice, by internalizing sound and improving in a natural way to the rhythm that they've already felt from the first two measures, if that makes sense.
But Debbie, I think are you talking about improvisation rather than the vocalization?
No, I'm talking about clapbacks.
Okay.
If all else fails, you make it up, right? But it's not flying blind because they're already learning to improvise a rhythm in response. So we do sometimes responding rhythms in.
Okay. I must have misunderstood. I thought Lois was asking about the length of the singing back in the vocalization, not the clapping part of it.
I think all of this actually just goes to show how much the musicianship supports each other because Noreen, I think your answer was perfect actually for what I was talking about in the clapback because you're entirely right. It's a melody, right? So thinking of it and humming it in your head maybe while you're clapping it back could be helpful. But Debbie, I also really like the improv tie-in then of just making up what would make sense kind of for the last half of it. So
I have to tell you that I sometimes have trouble separating some of this because to me it's the whole thing all the time. Doesn't matter what it is. And this is where the solfege really comes in. Like if they're used to doing solfege, it just goes off in the brain. So
Yeah, the goal when we established our musicianship was to develop the whole pie. Because when you have the whole pie, suddenly it all makes sense. When they can use solfege, when they're doing the oral component of our exam is really really a curriculum, a development of step by step by step. How they move from one stage to the next and adding labels. So that was all how we planned it, and I think it really pays off in the end.
I would agree. Laura.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. The solfege component in the CNCM curriculum is like so key to so much stuff that's missing from other musicianship aspects. But I had a question while you were talking about the ear training, especially like the clapback. So if a student asked, I'm thinking with an interval, it's played one time, right? Or a chord that they're to identify. It's played one time, and the student's to identify that. What if they said, because my students do this when we're in lessons a lot, can you play that again? Can you play that again? How is that handled in an exam situation?
Do you want me to answer that one, Noreen?
Sure.
We've been working on our skills packages for our examiners a lot. And so reality is they would not be penalized. If they asked for every single one to be repeated, there might start to be a deduction. But the reality is, again, we know they're under stress, and we know that hearing can be one of the first things that go under stress. We don't hear things clearly. And so it is not a problem. And we do encourage students to talk to our examiners. They can say, and they can self-correct, things like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's nice to know that if a student says, so like if they were doing their intervals and the first one was a third and they called it a second or step, and then the next one was something and they realized, if they corrected that, then their mark would actually be adjusted by the examiners?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's the expectation for our examiners, yes.
That's
And
Now, another thing too, if I find someone's really weak on their intervals, I will maybe give them an extra one and make sure it's one that I feel confident they can get right, like a perfect unison or do to do or something like that, right?
yeah, our examiners are there to help the students. We can't extend the time because we already give more time than traditional conservatory examinations. So we have to stay on time. But at the same time, the hope is that we are going to make the students successful as examiners as well.
Perfect. All right. Any additional or follow-up questions from anyone for today? Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you so much to everyone who came out. Noreen, thank you for another fabulous presentation and kind of leading us through this aspect of um, playing the piano and interacting with the CNCM syllabus and everything. We look forward to our next teacher information session being on kind of a walkthrough of what to expect for a performance exam, which will be a great resource to have in preparation for exams that will be coming up before we know it in June.
Okay.